Every time there's a financial crisis, that's the best time to enter the market.
As a startup?
As an investor. There are startups on Shark Tank India. The day their show get broadcasted, minutes after that, their website crashes, their server is jammed, Amazon blacklists them because they have never seen a traffic like that. The Gen Z generation and a lot of young people today, they have so many backup plans that it makes them weak. When they're dating, they have something called benching.
How do you think AI is going to change the world? If you had to bet on one sector for a startup or one startup in a sector, what would that be?
Today, we're thrilled to have Ravi K. Ranjan on the show. A dynamic leader in the startup ecosystem, Ravi has been a driving force behind the launch of Shark Tank India and a champion of entrepreneurship across the globe. With over a decade of experience, he has mentored thousands of entrepreneurs, shaped impactful policies, and helped startups tackle real-world challenges. Ravi joins us to share his inspiring journey and the lessons he's learned in building a thriving entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Welcome to the show, Ravi. Business with Bartawi is mainly for entrepreneurs that are looking to educate themselves more, understand about the business world and all the different topics in it. We welcome you to the show today. I'll be very excited to hear from you. But first, we're going to start with a rapid fire round. It's going to be questions that come out really fast. You can answer in one word or one sentence. You can go above if you have to, but we're trying to keep it as short as possible. Should we start?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mahmoud. It's a pleasure to be here. It's always amazing to be in Dubai and especially meeting people like you who have done great work for a country which is so amazing and it's growing every day. It's a pleasure to be talking to you.
Pleasure is mine. Pleasure to have you and to welcome you as a guest on the show. So you've been to Dubai quite a bit.
Yes, I love Dubai. I call Dubai my second home, so I keep visiting. But what's interesting about the city is that every time you come, doesn't matter if you're coming after 6 months or 6 weeks, there's something new happening. There's something exciting happening. And I think that's the core of entrepreneurship, as you can understand as a founder, that you cannot be comfortable. You have to keep pushing yourself every day to do something great. And I think that's one of the reasons why Dubai is kind of set to be one of the best cities in the world. So this excites me to come to Dubai every time.
Nice. And since when was the first time you came to Dubai?
Interestingly, my first visit to Dubai was during COVID, where the entire country was almost locked. I came here for the first time. And what was interesting, even during COVID restrictions, the government had put down some very interesting measures to make sure that people who really mean business, they can travel across the city, such as including various tests at the airport and supporting with passes and all. So it was very exciting, my first visit. And then I started coming almost every other month. And again, it was a great experience. And I have traveled to some of the best cities in the world. But Dubai has always been very close to my heart.
Wow. It's so nice to hear it from you, especially, you start coming after COVID. So that's a very interesting time. Things moved forward and you saying, every other month then you'd be back. So take us back to your journey about when you started Shark Tank India. What year did you start working with Shark Tank India?
Yeah, that's a very interesting story. I'll talk about that. But this question is very interesting. And why it's interesting is because for the last 3 years, every time I go anywhere, people are very curious about Shark Tank and they ask me questions about Shark Tank and they ask me, how was your experience? But what's also interesting and funny is that before Shark Tank, I have done so many great things. And I don't think people remember that. But it's a good thing because it gives you the message that when you build something which is such a big brand, something like Shark Tank, and something which inspires millions of people. Rest everything what you do is good, but this is the best. I have been working with the startup ecosystem for more than 14 years now. I started way back in 2010. This was the time when we had less than 300 startups in India. And to tell anyone that, oh, listen, I'm a founder, I'm building something, or I need capital, people would almost call you a mad person. I'm not kidding you, Mahmoud. There are some instances I remember from 2011, 2012, where there was a guy who was about to get married. And then his in-laws asked him, "What do you do?" He said, "Oh, I'm building a startup and I'm a founder." They thought he's an unemployed person. He doesn't have money. And they were about to call off the wedding. This was the crazy thing.
Because he was a founder.
He was a founder, and that time people could not understand. But fast forward to 2024, today India is the third largest startup ecosystem in the world, with more than 117 unicorns and thousands of startups building great stuff. A show like Shark Tank has really catapulted the entire spirit of entrepreneurship. Today, normal people, grandmother, young kids are talking about raising capital, going to series A, B, and C, etc.
I want to go back a step and ask, where did all this start? We talk about Shark Tank being in India, but if we go, to the history of Shark Tank, what is pretty much the starting point where someone decided to launch that show?
Absolutely. So I think, again, that's a very interesting story. People know Shark Tank, but very few people know about the origin of Shark Tank. So Sony International is part of a corporation from Japan, and they have a channel in Japan called Nippon TV. On Nippon TV, they built a show called Tiger of Money.
Tiger of Money.
This was the origin of Shark Tank. Tiger of Money was in Japan for a few years, and from there on it went to UK and Canada, and it was known as Dragon's Den.
Okay.
You might know Dragon's Den.
Dragon's Den.
A lot of people think it's a different show, but it's exactly the same show with a different branding. From there, it was doing well, but not the way it is today.
So Japan to UK.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then in 2009, right after one of the biggest recession in the US economy, the subprime mortgage crisis, Mark Burnett, who's a very famous producer and he's known to be one of the most famous reality show producer, he took Dragon's Den Bible and he converted that into Shark Tank, the way we see it in the US today. It was a great time, 2009, for the show, but not a great time for entrepreneurs because nobody was buying new clothes, nobody was buying anything. The e-commerce was not as good as it is today, and almost the entire economy across the world was in a very bad state.
So he got the timing off. He took a show from the UK, he rebranded it, and he was a reality show guy, and he launched it in the US.
Yes.
But the timing for entrepreneurship wasn't there yet.
It wasn't there.
It wasn't cool to be an entrepreneur.
It was okay, but again, people were not sure because some of the biggest banks failed in that crisis, right? When you see in front of you a bank worth $30 billion collapsing like a house of cards, you don't have the courage to start where you need $100,000 as the first check. But again, that's the spirit of entrepreneurship, and that's, I would call it the American dream, where they started the show in 2009, started going slowly. And by 2012, Shark Tank was a household name. People started watching the show, started enjoying the show, and it paved way for any ordinary person to be able to dream something. Because unfortunately, in most of the developed and developing economies, after you finish your graduation, you want to get a job because you want financial support. There are very few avenues where somebody is coming and saying, listen, why don't you build something of your own? I'm here to back you up. I'm here to give you money, and not only money, but to support your idea and tell you that I believe in you.
Right.
That's a very big thing to do. Rest is history. From 2012 to 2024, it has become a phenomenon across the world. And what is so interesting is that Shark Tank, in the current format, is available in 40 countries across the world.
Okay, that's from 2009 to 2012. What is that pivotal change that the founder of Shark Tank did better than Dragon's Den to be able to go to 40 countries?
I would say three things. Number one, the selection of sharks. They got some really amazing founders on the show who have built very difficult businesses and made a lot of money. For example, you've got Kevin, who's known as Mr. Wonderful. He has built a great business. He might come across as a person who's a little, I would say, rough, but he means business.
Right.
Damon, who has built Fubu, which is a streetwear brand, very, very powerful. And again, he brings that charisma with him and all of that stuff. And I think all the sharks have a very strong personality. One of them is a operator. Another one is a founder. You have a very great combination. That's number one. Number two, the capital. So the capital comes from the founders themselves. It's not a corpus from the show, which is given to startups on the show. You as a shark I'm investing my own money. What it means is that I'm going to invest in the best of the best ideas.
Right.
And I would also support the founders with my network so that they can grow. Number three, the positioning of the show. This is something which very few people know about. Shark Tank is considered as a business show.
Right.
Shark Tank is a entertainment show about business. That is very different.
How different?
Just to give you perspective, Shark Tank is one of the top shows in the world in the reality show genre. It has won many, many awards, and it has been one of the most entertaining show so far in the reality show across the world.
So it's in the category of reality shows.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, a reality show that's about business, and India is number what out of 40 countries in terms of viewership? How many viewers are based in India?
I would not call it number one because what's interesting is that the Shark Tank US on OTT and other platforms is watched across the world. So while Shark Tank is broadcasted in the US every season, the repeat telecast or the snippets from previous shows, people watch it across the world because it's in English. I'm sure you must have watched it when you were building a startup. I have seen it for the last many, many years. And honestly, before Shark Tank came to India, every entrepreneur in India used to treat Shark Tank like a Bible, and they used to watch the show for negotiation, for learning how to pitch, for learning how to raise capital. And I think India would be number two.
India would be number two. Okay.
Because again, it's just 3 seasons.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but I see Shark Tank in different languages in different countries. I can understand the English being for the US and probably the UK, and I see the Indian one is in Hindi. So what's your view on this, on localizing the language as opposed to having it one universal language?
No, absolutely. That's a very fair point. Before I answer that, I'll give you an interesting anecdote. I was watching a show. It's a British show, and somebody asked one of the guests, "Can you guess which city in the world has highest English-speaking people?" And the guest was saying, "London. There's nothing to think about it." And then the host said, "No, it's Mumbai in India."
Oh, wow.
Interestingly, today India as a country has highest number of English-speaking people. People in India speak English better than their mother tongue. Most of the people are learning English in their school, and English is as widely accepted as Hindi. Interestingly, Hindi might not be the biggest language because India has 29 states and 6 union territories. And when you go to South India, everyone in those states don't speak Hindi. So you have Tamil Nadu, Kerala, etc., etc. Then you go to Northeast India, people don't speak a lot of Hindi. But Central India, East India, people speak a lot of Hindi. However, what's interesting about Hindi as a language is that everyone understands it. And it's a very emotional language. The way you can express your emotions in Hindi, you cannot do it in English. So I'm assuming when the producers were making this show, they realized it because the show was coming on a GEC, which is known as Sony TV, General Entertainment Channel, where people watch Hindi content, both fiction and non-fiction. And this channel has been one of the top in the country for the last many, many years. So it was a very conscious decision to do it in Hindi because majority of the viewers who watch television content are Hindi speaking and they understand Hindi.
Right.
I still get a lot of messages from my friend in South India that why this show is not in Tamil or Telugu. But the problem is that the minute you make it regional, it's limited to less than 5% people in the country.
Right.
So I think that was one of the conscious decisions.
Yeah. So have you heard of Shark Tank Dubai?
Yes, I did.
Have you been watching any episodes?
I tried watching it, but I cannot find it online. It's not on an OTT. It was on a channel locally, and no offense, it was limited to the regional language, which unfortunately I do not understand. I would love to learn Arabic, but at this stage of my life, I think it would take a lot of time. So I was actually expecting Shark Tank Dubai to be one of the most famous edition because it's Dubai. You have this great leadership here who's driving the country. You have so many amazing entrepreneurs, access to capital. And if you look at Dubai, who could have imagined that someone can build Palm Jumeirah out of nowhere? So when you look at a country like this, with the country which built Burj Khalifa and Palm Jumeirah and everything else, you expect the show to be one of the best of the best. I think there was too much expectation from the show.
Yeah, but you can't even find it. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's a challenge. Yes,
that's a challenge.
But again, I did not answer your question. Sorry for that. Shark Tank came to me in 2020, right in the middle of pandemic. I was working from home, and then I got this opportunity to, act as the curator and the business advisor to the show. But it was a long journey. I spent first 6 months doing a research and survey about this show, if something like this would make sense in India. And it's very interesting, the way it happened in the US, where the show was sanctioned and approved only after the crisis. Similarly, in India, the show was approved in 2019 and the COVID happened. This was not a good time to build a show, especially a show which is absolutely new, a new concept in a country where most of the people watch entertainment shows. So producers were not sure.
So producers wanted to do a business reality show, but were not sure. And they reached out to you and said, can you come help us with this? And so I wanted to know, what is the difference between a producer and a curator?
Absolutely. So a producer is a production house which takes a concept and produce it. Not every time the production house has the ownership of the content. So the content is an IP created by an individual or another company. So for example, in this scenario, Shark Tank is a global IP which is owned by Sony. So every time a country wants to do the show, they need to take the IP license from Sony International. You take the license and you bring it to your country. After this, you need 3 to 4 stakeholders to build a show. Number one, you need a production house, which will do the entire production of the show. Number two, you need a broadcaster. So it would be a TV channel. Sometimes the production house and the broadcaster can be the same, but most of the time it's not the same. The third stakeholder is now you need an OTT. Again, the OTT channel can be from the same house of channel, or it can be something different. For example, the production house can be Endemol, the broadcaster can be Star, and the OTT can be Netflix.
Right.
But interestingly, in this scenario for Shark Tank India, the ownership, the broadcaster, and the OTT, all three were Sony. So Shark Tank was owned by Sony International. It was to be broadcasted on Sony TV in India, broadcasted on Sony Live OTT on India, and Sony has a production house called Studio Next, which is their in-house production. So it was a win-win situation for all of them. They reached out to me. So I was consulting with a VC fund called Venture Catalyst. And they reached out first to Venture Catalyst, actually, not to me directly. However, Venture Catalyst delegated this entire work to me to, in a way, completely curate the show. Now, a curator can be a person from within the production house or can be a subject matter expert from outside. Because Sony is an entertainment channel, they wanted someone who has experience in startups, who understands startup completely. Right. And that's where I came into the picture. And my job was very interesting and very challenging because for the first 6 months, I had to sign a few NDAs and I was supposed to do a survey without telling people that I'm interviewing them for Shark Tank or for Sony TV.
And these are entrepreneurs or?
These are investors who we are considering for Shark. These are entrepreneurs who we are considering to bring on the show.
And they have no idea.
They have no idea. And they keep on asking, Ravi, is it Shark Tank? And I'm like, no, what Shark Tank? I have to keep a straight face. Yeah.
Very interesting. So you had to interview people that had no idea. And then what was the data you got that helped you move forward?
For 6 months, we interviewed a lot of investors. We interviewed a lot of founders. And from them, we figured out that India is at a cusp where a show like Shark Tank can actually push the entire ecosystem, number one. And number two, because there are so many people who are building startups, so many people who are investing in startups, and so many people who appreciate the entire movement of entrepreneurship, which means that there's a large number of viewers who would watch a show like this. And why I'm saying this? Right before 2020 pandemic in 2019, Indian startups had raised a lot of capital. And during 2020 COVID, interestingly, Indian startups raised highest amount of capital ever in the history of startups in India. So on one side, people thought that COVID is the end of entrepreneurship. Nobody's going to put money. Companies will shut down and die.
End of everything.
And Actually, there were VC funds who were sending notes to founders to preserve capital. But then the opposite happened. People thought that I have all this money, what I'm going to do with this? Let's spend it on something which I care about, which I value about. And also, it's a global phenomena. It's a global historic data. Every time there's a financial crisis, that's the best time to enter the market
As a startup,
as an investor.
as an investor.
It's the best time to invest in stocks. It's the best time to invest in startups.
Right.
It's the best time to invest in
So
assets.
Sony decides after COVID, they have the IP of Shark Tank globally. They decide to scale to India
Before COVID.
before COVID.
Yes.
And then after COVID, they decide to actually do it.
Yes.
And they contact you and they say, come help us launch the show. What was your reaction? And how was that journey?
It was a very interesting opportunity for me because very few people know about this. I studied journalism and film production when I was a student in my college. That's what I did for 3 years. And I really loved this entire process. In my college, I had a subject called film appreciation where I need to watch a movie and write an appreciation or the critique of the movie. In my 3 years of college, I watched almost 2,000 movies. But all these movies were good movies, great movies, intellectual movies. Unfortunately, Bollywood and a lot of content in India is not very smart content. It's dumb content. Sorry to say this, and I was not very comfortable with that. And that was one of the reasons. After working in media house as a journalist, as a radio jockey for some time, I left that and I came to the startup ecosystem. I was unhappy about it. So somewhere I had this pain of not being able to be part of the mainstream media. But I was very happy that I'm part of the startup ecosystem. When this opportunity came to me, it was a great combination of media and entrepreneurship. Because the entire startup piece was something where my input was required on every day.
Right.
So, apart from selecting all the sharks, this is a very interesting conversation. We'll talk about that. So, selecting the sharks, building the framework for startups to apply, getting application, shortlisting it, building a business team. One of my job was to train the Sony team on startup nomenclatures.
Wait 1 second. So you're saying the curator's job is to choose the judges, to choose which startups get in, and also to arrange the whole thing.
I don't select which startups will go, but I certainly create a framework on how startups will be shortlisted. It's a teamwork. There are a lot of people involved in selecting it.
And how many startups did you work with?
Interestingly, season 1, we got 60,000 applications.
And you went through 60,000
Yes.
applications?
It was a team. It was a big team of the business and the entertainment team combined.
So for someone out there that wants to do a startup, what is the best advice you have for them? Like what are the top 3 things they can look out for to have the perfect pitch deck?
It's a combination of many things, but I can think of 3 major things. Number 1, the founding team. Very crucial. Because a lot of times your idea is great, people are excited about it, but they also want to see the team because there's no surety that what you're building will become successful.
Right.
If that does not go well, does the founding team have capability to pivot and build something new?
And what is that thing you ask them to find out if they have that capability? How do you know off the bat?
First, it should be a combination. If there are 2 or 3 founders, one should be good in business, one should be good in technology, and one should be good in sales, so that they can all hustle together and they can build something. You look at their pedigree, their education qualification, you look at their past experience. If they have been working in jobs, you see what they have done. If they have built startups in the past, that's an added advantage. So you look at all these combinations. So founding team is number 1. Number 2, the idea itself, what you are working on, is it in a market large enough? Or is it in a market which is small today, but is going to be large tomorrow? That's very important. And the third thing, is it a scalable model? What it means is that can you use technology to scale it very fast? Unfortunately, a lot of people in emerging economies, they don't realize the difference between a business and a startup. People think that anyone who's doing business is an entrepreneur or he's a startup founder.
What is that main difference between a startup founder and...
Exactly. So startups and traditional businesses, they are both business at the end of the day. At the end of the day, both of them need to make money and both of them need to become profitable. However, the core objective of a business is to make profit from day one. Or it can take some time, but the core objective is you want to make money.
Business, right?
Yes. Startup. The core objective, you want to solve a problem. a big problem, a problem which has affected you personally because of something, a problem which a lot of people go through but they are not able to find a solution, and you believe that by using technology, I can solve this problem, I would have very less overhead cost, and I can scale faster to many countries. One of the best example is Uber. Today, when you go out in Dubai in the evening from 5 to 8 and in morning 9 to 11, you don't get a taxi. It's just not available.
Never.
Imagine 20 years ago when you need a taxi to go to the airport in the morning at 4 o'clock. What you would do is that you would go to the local taxi stand, talk to a driver and tell him that, listen, please come tomorrow, drop me to the airport. I mean,
Yes.
we have all done that in the past. Or if you are privileged enough, you would have a driver, you would have a car, but you don't have a driver. So you don't want to wake up your dad or your mom to drop you to the airport.
Right.
You might have a driver, but the driver will not come 3 o'clock in the morning. These are some very basic problems, but technology was not available to solve something like this. That's when Uber came, where they saw there are a lot of drivers and cars available who can drop people at different points, and people need those things. How can I connect them? They built a very simple technology interface. And interestingly, Uber is the largest cab provider in the world right now, but they don't own even one single taxi of their own.
Right, just the technology.
Just the technology. And it's so large, Mahmoud, is that one simple interface where I have a demand, you have a supply, they connect both of them. And Uber very clearly says that the driver partners are partners. They're not employed by Uber. And you are requesting services from the platform, but they're not liable for any of what happens.
No, it's just connecting people.
Exactly. But by doing that, they have scaled to almost 150, 60 countries in the world. And what's interesting is that, again, I was very fortunate in 2014 to see the launch of Uber in India. So I used to work in an office. It was a co-working space. And the Uber India team used to sit next to my cabin. There were 3 people team. And every day, they used to bring big boxes of iPhones, like 2,000 iPhones, and distributing to driver partners. Because initially, Uber had a mandate that the driver partner would use only an iPhone, which is given by Uber.
Right.
So people used to come, get this training done, and then go out on market.
So training for free. I want to be a cab driver in India. I go to Uber head office. They train me. And how many days was that?
The training was, I think they used to do a full day training one day and then get on road. Interestingly,
Start making money.
Absolutely. You become a mini entrepreneur, a micro
Right, a mini
entrepreneur.
entrepreneur. So you're saying that kind of fueled entrepreneurship all the way up to Shark Tank in 20.
Absolutely.
After COVID.
And just to conclude on the Uber part, in the first few years of Uber launch in India, drivers made so much money that they bought houses and cars.
Wow.
Which is the gig economy, which can open up so many opportunities.
It basically put everybody into a box and upskilled everyone one level up.
Absolutely. And a show like Shark Tank, it creates a platform where people can believe that, listen, I don't have money today, but I have a great idea. I can get money. Or people can say that, listen, I need a lot of support from a mentor or an expert who has done this themselves, who are the sharks who can come and mentor you. And third, you get this free platform to promote yourself across the viewership, right? I mean, millions of people are watching a show when it's being broadcasted on TV, but they're also watching it for many, many months to come on social media.
Right.
So your brand is getting such a wide recall. Just to give you example, Mahmoud, there are startups on Shark Tank India. The day their show get broadcasted, minutes after that, their website crashes, their server is jammed, Amazon blacklists them because they have never seen a traffic like that. I mean, imagine if you're getting 1,000 visitors a day, suddenly you get 100,000.
It's the sheer viewership and numbers in India. So you get on a show in India, you have a normal business, or maybe nothing. You get on the show, all this media covers you, and a few hours later, your website's attacked. Basically, people trying to find out who's this guy on the show.
Absolutely.
Crazy story.
And the story part is very important. So one of the very important element of Shark Tank is that it's about storytelling. It's about sharing your emotions and your challenges with the audience. And that's why you'll see globally in Shark Tank, most of the products which come on Shark Tank are physical products which you can see, touch and feel.
Right.
You would rarely see a SaaS company or a mobile application or a deep tech B2B companies because you cannot demonstrate that on TV.
Right.
People would not be able to get
It's
the
more
emotion.
on the business side.
I mean, if you remember the Sponge Daddy pitch from Shark Tank US, one of the most famous pitches ever. Right. This guy comes with a scrub, You put it in hot water, cold water, it changes texture and you do it. And the pitch was flawless. Like in India also, we have some very interesting pitches. I think those pitches are a masterclass on how to pitch.
Yeah.
So when you come and you share your personal story, people connect to you. For example, there's a startup. I have been mentoring them for a long time. It's called Altor. It's a smart helmet company. So you wear the helmet and it has all the data access and it provides this data on your mobile app on how you're driving, etc., etc. But what's interesting about it, and they have a patent about it, if a rider is wearing the Altor helmet and they fall on the ground, it detects that the person has fallen and it sends an SOS message to their friends, police, and ambulance. You can save a life. When the founders came on the show, they spoke about how one of their friend passed away when he met with an accident and how they wanted to solve this problem. Immediately, everyone connected.
It's a real problem. Your friend dies, he has an
Exactly.
accident, you go make a discovery, you get a helmet, you put on an SOS system to reach out to someone, his family or whoever they registered. If something happens to them, it's a brilliant idea.
In a road accident, the first 30 minutes, the golden hour is the most important. If you get treated in that, the chances of survival increases dramatically.
So the helmet would reach out and tell
Yes.
people that so-and-so has met with an accident?
Yes, absolutely. Also, it has your medical data, your allergies, the medication you are on, etc., which is not available because you're not conscious. Nobody can ask you those questions.
So the team show up, at least they have some data on what not to do to you.
Absolutely.
Wow.
There are so many stories like this. So the bottom line is that, are you able to connect the audience with your story? It can be emotional, it can be little dramatic, it can be something which you and me can relate to. So the storytelling is very important.
Would you say the storytelling comes before the numbers or after having like a solid business plan and all that other stuff?
I would say you start with a pitch, first 1 to 2 minutes, where you talk about what is the problem, what is the solution, how big is the market size, why you are the best team to solve it. Then you talk about what inspired you to do this, why are you building this. Then you talk a little bit about the traction, but then you again go back in storytelling. This is the point where you have to engage the audience, because as you know, humans have a very short span of attention, right? First 2 to 3 minutes. That's where you have to get their attention into you.
Starting from a small city in Jharkhand, right?
Jharkhand, yes.
Jharkhand. Starting from that small city, you started as a journalist and reporting stories. What got you to say, I'm done with these stories, I'm going to do entrepreneurship?
Yeah, that's a very interesting story. So I was born and raised in a very small town in Jharkhand. When I was growing up, my village was the highest Naxal affected area in the country, which means there was a lot of civil unrest. And I've seen a lot of challenges. One of the challenge was that we used to get electricity like maybe once in 6 months. I grew up like that, in that scenario. I went to a government school with barely no infrastructure. I mean, today, my niece and my nephews, they go to fancy schools with all the infrastructure. Honestly, we had nothing.
Electricity once in 6 months?
Yes.
What was that like?
I don't know. I can't imagine that. But it was very difficult. And the place where I was, there was a lot of poverty, a lot of challenges. So typically in a scenario like this, you become a person who's just trying to survive. But I was different. I was very curious. I used to ask a lot of questions. Unfortunately, there was no internet, no mentor, no guide to tell you. Forget about that. There was not even a library in 200 kilometers of the radius of my village. There was no proper hospital. I mean, somebody, if they fall sick, it would take them 4 hours to reach the nearest hospital. It was very difficult. But again, I was very curious. I always wanted to ask questions to people. There were very few answers available, and that made me more curious. Somehow I finished my school, and just before the beginning of my college, I got an opportunity to visit a large city in India. It's called Chandigarh in North India. And that's where for the first time I saw a big city with buildings, and I saw a McDonald's, and I saw a multiplex. And that's where I saw a young journalist. She was doing live reporting, and I was very intrigued by her. And I saw her and I asked her that, how did you do it? So then she was kind enough to tell me that she studied journalism and she became that. I said, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to become a journalist and I want to solve problems. And once I do that, everything will be good.
Yeah.
I actually applied for a very prestigious college in Delhi, which is the capital of India, and I got selected in that program. But unfortunately, that time, the fees and the expenses which was there, my family was not in the condition to afford that fees, and I was very
So
sad.
after being accepted, they couldn't
Yes.
afford it, and you became
I
sad.
mean, out of hundreds of thousands of students, you get selected, and because you cannot pay the fees, you cannot go it. I mean, if I look at today, just my phone and my watch would be way more expensive than the fees.
Yeah.
But that's today, not that day.
Tough times.
Yes.
They make
But-
strong men, they say.
But I would say it was good that I did not go to that college, because if I would have gone to that college, I would have got a very nice job and I would have been comfortable always there, not doing what I do today. I decided that the college would not decide my fate. It would be me. So I went to a good college. It was in my state, Jharkhand. I went to a good college. I studied, but because I had to support my family financially, I started working from day one of my college. So in the day, I used to go to college. In the evening, I used to work as a journalist for a newspaper. Then I became a radio jockey, and then I worked with a TV channel. I did that for 3 years. So by the time I finished my college, I had already 3 years of work experience.
Amazing. Amazing. You did 2 in 1.
I think that's what a lot of young kids miss today. They think that I'll do a graduation, then I'll do an MBA and a master's, then I'll start looking
No,
for
you
job.
start early. You start making that pocket money early.
Today, especially in 2024 and beyond, the world is so fast with information available on your fingertips. Everyone else is smarter than you. So what will make you different? It will be your on-the-ground experience. It would be your problem-solving skills. And it would be that unique skill which makes you different from millions of other young kids. Because one of the interesting thing about us in our generation, Mahmoud, you as well, was that whatever you study and whatever you prepare, it was your hard work. There was no chat GPT to give you the answers. Today, everyone has access to the same quality of content. Even in my village, where I'm coming from, or somebody who's living in Dubai or California.
And what does that do? It increases opportunity, you'd say?
No, it does not.
It does not.
This extreme access to information, first of all, makes people lazy. Today, I have seen young kids using ChatGPT for their homework. Imagine if you are finding answers on ChatGPT which everyone else in the world is able to find. What would make you different when you go to build a startup or get a job?
So you went to that university and you did journalism and you did 3 years of work experience. What was that moment where you said, no, I want to go to startups?
So I became journalist after finishing my college and I was working very well. But the problem happened where I did a reporting on a social issue and I went to my editor with that report. He said that we cannot publish this. I said, why? He said, because there are politicians involved in this and there are people involved in this who also sponsor our newspaper. I said, but we are journalists. This is our job. We are the fourth pillar of democracy. He said, you're very young. It doesn't work like that. It would not happen. I said, no, I want answers. See, I was very young and rebellious, right? And I had an argument with him and I said that, listen, if I cannot write the truth, I don't need to be part of this. I left that. Without any backup plan, without any idea of what I'm going to do. Because see, this was my dream. I dreamt it for many years. I worked hard. I got into it. And then you face the disappointment. That's why people say never meet your hero. Because if your hero is not the way you want him to be, you will start hating your hero. And it has happened many times in the world. So I met my hero and it was not the way I wanted it to be. So for the next 1.5 years, again, this is a very interesting story. So, because I studied from a government school with very bare resources, till the time I finished my college, I could not speak even a word of English.
Of English?
I could not speak English.
At all?
So, I saw this as an opportunity. I went to New Delhi, which is again the capital of India, and I applied for a master's program in one of the best universities in India. I got selected again. And the same thing happened with me twice. I could not afford to pay the fees. It was not too much.
I have to tell you honestly. You apply for a place and you don't even you didn't think of the money first, but you're applying. That's so entrepreneurial. Like
yes,
you're trying
because I thought we'll figure out something.
Yeah. So you rejected again, and back to base one.
And so then what I did is that this was the time of call centers in India. So I got a job in a call center. It was an English call center and I could not speak English, but how I got it? Because I always used to train myself, the basics of it. And somehow I worked really hard and there was a friend who helped me. I cracked the interview And interestingly, they had a 2-month training to train you on how to speak English. That was the biggest turning point for me. So I used to work in the night from 10 till 5 in the morning in the call center, learning English and doing my job, getting some money. I come home, I sleep for some time, and then I go and do a full-time job in the day because I need to make money.
Right.
And I used to sleep like 4 to 5 hours. But those 1.5 years, they really changed me as a person. I was really good. I was collecting a lot of information. And that's when, luckily, I got an opportunity to join the Indian startup ecosystem in 2010 and 11.
So what was that job that you were doing that pushed you into the startup?
No, I did not. So I got invited for a job interview, which was in this Indian angel network. And they invited me to manage events in this company. I got selected for that. But when the first day of my job, my boss comes to me and she says, Ravi, do you know what incubator is? I said, I have no idea. She said, do you know what entrepreneur is? I said, I have no idea.
This was which year?
This was 2010 and 11, like end of 2010.
Yeah.
I was like, I have no idea. But then she said, do you want to know about it? I said, absolutely. She said, okay, you have 3 months. If you learn these things, I would move you to the startup ecosystem, like the startup vertical, not the event vertical. I worked really hard. So I had a full-time job of managing events and planning events. And whenever I used to get time, I used to request my colleagues to tell me, what is Series A funding, what is angel investor, etc., etc. And interestingly, this was the time when I started using Wikipedia a lot, and I started learning about all the terms. So I think for a lot of young kids today, we were not fortunate to have internet and all the information. Today they are underutilizing it. They should really utilize. So I did that, and less than 3 months, I was given an opportunity to run the incubation center and the angel network, which was one of the first in India. And that changed my life, because I met some of the best founders and investors during those years. I remember meeting a very young guy called Ritesh Agarwal, who's the founder of Oyo Rooms, one of the biggest startup today. Wow. He was a very young kid, and he came to raise capital. Unfortunately, people rejected him because he never went to college, and people thought that this idea would not work. But I asked him a question. It was very interesting. He said, Ravi, I don't have a backup plan. This is something which I will have to do, because this is what I want to do. And the reason is that, the result is that...
You found it interesting that he didn't have a backup plan.
Yes, absolutely.
And you said, this is what he has to do, so I have to support him. And, he's rejected because he's not going to university, and,
The Gen Z generation and a lot of young people today, they have so many backup plans that it makes them weak. In fact, when they're dating, they have something called benching. So you have someone sitting on the bench for you while you're dating someone. So you have so many backup plans that you're not passionate enough to give your all into that.
Arnold Schwarzenegger talks about no plan B. He says, you need, if you focused on plan B, you're taking all the attention away from A.
Absolutely.
You're now focused on benching and all the other people on the bench. You're forgetting about the game.
Absolutely.
The main player in the game. So what happened with that guy in the startup that came to you?
Very interesting. So, I remember, so every third Saturday, we used to organize an investment session where selected startups will come and pitch to the investors. He was selected and he came, and he could not get funding that day, and he was very disappointed. In fact, he was courageous enough to tell me that, listen, Ravi, my dad gave me money to go to college. I did not go to college. I used all that money to build this startup. Oh. And now I'm 2 months behind on my rent. My landlord has asked me to vacate because I cannot pay him rent. I was also staying with my friends, but I offered him to come and stay with me. But he said, that's very kind of you, but I would like to focus on this. And then I got in touch with him 3 months later. He was able to raise a small round of capital from a point where he could not afford to pay 10,000 rupees as rent, which is like
2,000.
10,000 dirham.
Okay.
No, 10 is too much. 5,000 dirham, right? He could not afford to pay that rent. From a point, he built a company which is worth $10 billion.
Today.
Wow. Again, unfortunately, he got a devaluation now. But 2 years ago, his company was valued at $11 billion. He's now going for an IPO. He's one of the Shark on Shark Tank India.
Oh, no way. That's so you met him at the beginning when he got rejected.
Yes.
And that story inspired you?
It absolutely did, because he kept on it. He said, I believe in this idea. I know it's going to work. I have enough data. I'm not just mad about it. I have data to back it up. So he was trying to build something like an Airbnb for India. He started with that. He called it Oravel.com. But again, Airbnb does not work in India too well. So he pivoted that and he built Oyo, which is like Uber for hotels. So he pick up all the hotels, he rebranded, he make it nice, put some nice mattress and sheets and all, and he make it well. And this was such an inspiring story. And there are so many stories like that. And because I was at the core of it, I met thousands of such entrepreneurs in my journey. So Indian Angel Network gave me a lot of opportunity. From there on, I worked with a few more organizations. And one of the, again, very pivotal point in my career was working with a company called NASSCOM 10,000 Startup. So NASSCOM is a not-for-profit trade body which promotes IT and startups. And they built a program supported by Government of India and funded by Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Kotak, everyone, Intel. The idea was to build the startup ecosystem in India. This was 2014. So from 2014 to 2017, I was doing that. Mm-hmm. And this time, we incubated more than 30,000 startups, invested in a lot of them. And suddenly, from 2014 onwards, the Indian startup ecosystem changed. People started getting a lot of capital, built great companies like Flipkart and Myntra.
14 to 17.
14 to 17. That was the turning point of Indian.
And was Shark Tank already in India at the time?
Okay. Shark Tank came in 2021, right. Way later. So for me personally, it was a great opportunity because I used to travel across the country and meet a lot of entrepreneurs. So what I did is that I realized that less than 0.0001% people know about entrepreneurship. I, in my personal capacity, have to educate more people. So I started going to a lot of events and started talking about entrepreneurship. Interestingly, I have now, till date, trained more than 200,000 aspiring entrepreneurs, 20,000 academicians, 2,000 government officials, and I have been a speaker at more than 2,000 events.
Wow. So wait, 200,000 entrepreneurs or 20,000 entrepreneurs?
200,000.
That's a crazy number. 200,000. If you gave each one 1 hour, that would be 96 years?
I did it collectively. So I used to go to large events. For example, in India, there are these group of colleges called IIT, Indian Institute of Technology. They are like the best of the best. They are like MIT. So you go to one conference and there are like 1,000 students. You go to IIM, there are 2,000 students. Then you go to large startup conferences, there are like 5,000 people who are listening to you. So because of that, I was able to kind of fast track it.
Amazing. So you basically, again, upskilled everyone to learn a little bit about entrepreneurship and to come into the ecosystem. What is that first point if someone knows if they should do a 9-to-5 or be an entrepreneur and go down that startup route?
See, today it's very easy. You can very easily do a ROI analysis of if I spend this much money on my education and then I get a job, what is the expected salary I can get for the rest of my life? And then if someone is happy with that, very simple to do. Nothing wrong with that. But people also can see data. There's enough data, both in India and the US, that if you build a startup, the kind of wealth you can generate for yourself and your stakeholders and the problem you can solve. Back in the days, it was not so easy. It was very difficult because there was very little capital available. The chances of failure were very, very high. The chances of your startup dying was very, very high. So at that point of time, somebody who had enough work experience working in a large company, and if they're able to find a great idea, that is when they were able to take the risk of building a startup. Today, it's much easier. Because again, as you know, every third generation of a large family, they have enough resources where they have a house, they have day-to-day expenses taken care of, they can take risk. People in the 50s and 40s could not take a lot of risk because you were surviving. You were hardly able to put food on the table. At that point of time, you cannot take risk of leaving everything because when you build a startup, it takes a few years before you can start making profit. Today, it's not the case. A lot of young people, they are able to do freelancing from a very early age. Social media has become so powerful. You can create content and make millions of dollars, and then you can build a startup. So today it's very easy. Back in the days in 2014, 15, it was very difficult
to do a startup.
Yeah, it was very difficult.
And what do you think about how do you compare 2014 to 2024 in terms of startups? Say I was a boy in India or in Dubai and I want to start up, do you think that it would be more acceptable for me to do it at that point or at this point?
I would say today is the easiest to build a startup, and today it's also very important for you to build a startup. I'll explain why. Today you have 5G internet. 6G is going to come very soon. What it means is that if you build a technology product, you don't need a storefront. You don't need a fancy showroom.
You can drop ship everything.
Drop ship everything. People can use your solution on their mobile phone. You can build something from Fujairah, Ajman or Dubai, and you can have clients across the world. You can build something from a small village in India and you can have buyers across the world. You have access to global capital.
Wow.
Today, a VC in US would not mind putting money in a startup which is doing well in Dubai or India. Right. Similarly, the audience would not say that, oh, you're from Dubai or India, I would only use a product locally made in US or UK. They would use a product which is good enough. I'll give you an example. Salesforce is one of the largest CRM in the world. They are from the US. Interestingly, if you reach San Francisco airport and you start going out, you will see Zoho, which is an Indian company, which is a competition to Salesforce. They have ads everywhere in San Francisco. So they are going to their home territory and they are saying that, listen, we are cheaper, we are effective, and we are better than you. And people are using Zoho.
Cheaper. Everyone wants the better option that's more affordable. So
and more customizable.
Right. So interesting. You say you helped, you've had a huge influence. You've helped 200,000 plus entrepreneurs in the ecosystem. What is that one lesson you wish that sticks with them?
See, it might not sound completely correct, but what I think is that humans, all of us, we have the same neural system, we have the same brain in our head, and we don't have access to equal resources. Somebody is born in a rich family, somebody is not born in a rich family, but everyone is intellectually rich. Do you choose to live a mediocre life for the rest of your life where you know that you have potential to do something, but you don't do it because you are so comfortable in something what you're doing every day? Or you have the courage enough to go out and say, I don't accept this. I want to solve a problem, build something big. Because truth be told, I'll give you an example. Rolex watches, right? They sponsor yacht events. They sponsor golf. They never sponsor football. Why is that? Football is a common man's game. Rolex say that we are for rich and elite. We don't want to be seen for common people. Very harsh, but that's the sad reality. If you have enough money, you have enough solutions to solve problems. So what I believe is that money is not the only factor. There are so many startups which are required to be built today so that large problems can be solved. What are these large problems? Giving access of clean water, sanitation, and internet to people across the world, something what Starlink is doing. There are so many startups who are building water from thin air in the atmosphere in remote areas where people don't have drinking water. There are startups who are building medical solutions so that people who live in remote areas, their lives can be saved in critical scenario. You want to be that person because you have the capability intellectually to solve a large problem. Are you putting enough effort to do it? Or you are so comfortable, oh, I got a job, I have enough money, I'm going to buy a car on EMI, I'm going to buy a house on EMI, and I'm going to be happy with that. So I believe that, as a human being, it's your responsibility to give it back to the world. Are you doing it? I think startup is the best way to give it back.
Okay, so this difference between a startup and a business is that the business is about making money, the startup is about solving a problem. Your advice to entrepreneurs is they should think about, is what they're doing enough, or should they go and find that problem that they want to solve? Are they dedicating themselves mentally? Are they using all of the resources to solve that problem?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, see, in a job, if you are so passionate that you wake up at 7 o'clock and go to work every day to fulfill someone else's dream, I'm sure you can wake up at 5 o'clock to solve your dream.
If it's important for you, right?
Yes.
What's one country that blew your mind with its startup culture?
US.
Tell us.
Oh, US has one thing which most of the countries in the world, they don't have. US celebrates failure. They say fail fast.
Right.
In most of the countries I have seen, your friends will start making fun of you. Your partner will start making fun of you. Your parents will not respect you. Because, you have studied well, you got a nice job, you leave everything and you build a startup which fails.
Yeah.
You're stupid, right? But that's not the case. You build something and it did not work because it gave you a lot of lesson to build it better. And that's what US supports. The entire ecosystem supports failure, and they encourage you to keep on trying to build something scalable.
Celebrating failures.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Our leader also, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid here, he says, I watched one of his talks, and he talks about, when a kid falls, it's not important that he fell down. What's important for is that when he falls down, he gets up one step forward.
Absolutely.
So it's very important to fall forward, to fall so that you are able to take that step forward. And I'm a full believer of what you said. If you see someone as a failure, it's only a failure if he gives up.
Absolutely.
Continue and try to solve a different problem or the same problem with this new knowledge. I really think that. What's the most challenging TEDx talk for you to give?
Most challenging TEDx talk for me was my first TEDx talk, because it was the audience was very young students, and I was thinking, see, if you speak in jargon and technical language, people would not be able to understand. So I had to dumb down what I was to give them. One of the most difficult talk which you can give is to students in kindergarten. You need to speak like that. So it was very difficult for me. I had to, I had this concept in my mind, but I had to make it very simple for people to understand. But that also told me that it's very easy to complicate, very difficult to simplify.
Exactly. It's very difficult to make it easy for someone who doesn't understand to get it. And it's your fault it's your, if you take it as your thing, you'll actually focus on delivering for the audience. So you've worked with multiple audiences. What is the hardest audience to impress?
I would say college students.
Hardest?
They have zero attention. They are so busy in their phone. They are just thinking there was one more lecture. And to get them engaged in a conversation, I would say it's very difficult. Unless they are self-motivated, which is very rare.
Yeah. You can't motivate someone. They're either motivated or not motivated.
Absolutely.
Solving the problem needs to be, like you said, that personal story, that thing that really inspires them. If you had to bet on one sector for a startup or one startup in a sector, what would that be?
That's a very interesting question, Mahmoud. I think healthcare is a very underrated sector. There has been very little innovation done in the last 30 years. Again, because it's very complicated and you need a lot of expertise to do it. But I believe a lot can be done in healthcare. Just to give you an example, a lot of people need to go to MRI scan, but they have to go inside the machine and it's very scary.
Scary. I once actually left the machine and
Same.
told the doctor, peace out. I left. He called me the second time and said, I'll give you something so you can relax, so you can get into the machine. And I got you a half-open machine. I couldn't do the closed machine.
Absolutely. And so today there are these standing MRIs which are not covered. It's open, but it's very few because it's very expensive. If people don't take it. I face the same situation, but that's just one problem. Think about it. There are so many areas across the world. You have a lot of countries in Middle East. You have a lot of countries in Africa, in East Asia, where the nearest hospital is 200 to 400 kilometers away. Can you build a portable ICU in that village and do telemedicine so that lives can be saved?
Portable
ICU
in a remote area.
with telemedicine.
With telemedicine.
It's possible today because of 5G.
Okay.
If you build it, it's $1 billion idea.
It's coming from you here. Well, glad to hear from you. I hope someone picks up on it and, comes and we hear about it.
Absolutely. So I think medical is very great. Obviously, with AI coming in such a big way, unfortunately, what's happening is that a lot of people are using AI as just a layer on top of their existing solution. There are very few people who are building core AI. If you have the capability and technical understanding to build a core AI solution to automate a lot of things and make lives easier, again, that's $1 billion opportunity, and OpenAI has showed that to the world, what it can do. So I think, and honestly, AI is in the infancy right now. 5 years down the line, it's going to change the world we live in.
How do you think AI is going to change the world? What is that one thing AI is going to do that people are not predicting?
One thing which is going to be very interesting is that today AI gives you information from the internet. Few years down the line, AI would have the intellectual capability to reason, question, and work on that themselves. So AI would not only give you answer, AI would become the answer itself, and it would start building solutions on their own.
Wow.
This is called the general intelligence, which all the companies are working together.
That fire inside you, Ravi, that keeps you going. What is it that keeps you going, even though the odds are stacked against you?
No, absolutely. I think my challenges have become my privilege. Um, I faced so many challenges in my beginning of my life that today biggest of the problems look so simple because I've seen it all. I have started from scratch many times. I'm not scared to lose. I'm not afraid of anything because I've seen the worst. Nothing can go bad from here on. A lot of people you see across the world. Again, there's no problem with being privileged. If you're privileged, it's very good. But most of the people who changed the world came from a very humble background. Be it King Martin Luther Jr. or Mahatma Gandhi or in fact the rulers of UAE. They saw so many challenges. They had zero resources. The only thing they had with them was perseverance, hard work, and a dream.
How do you see Sheikh Rashid, founder of Dubai, and his work over the years?
First of all, there was no oil here. This was a colony, British colony. People were suppressed and there were very little opportunity. It was a desert. Nobody wanted to come here, right? Everyone wanted to go to Europe or in India or US. India had spices and a lot of other things. Europe had the beautiful places and US had this industrialization. Nobody wanted to come here. When the first thing was to be able to unite the Emirates, there were regional conflicts and various places did not want to come together to bring this vision and tell people that listen, we are building something beautiful. Even when we are in a very difficult situation today, tomorrow is beautiful and we have to do it not for us but for our generations to come. That was first thing. Number two, I'm a big fan of Sheikh bin Rashid and other rulers because despite having very little access to oil, Dubai is one of the fastest growing economy in the world. They first started with ports, then they did pearl trading, and then they built a dream. I remember one of the interview where Sheikh bin Rashid said that I want to make Dubai one of the most famous tourist destination in the world. People laughed at him. They said, tourist destination Dubai. You have summer 10 months in a year. It's so hot. It's literally middle of nowhere. From there, Dubai is the top 5 tourist destination in the world today. We have the best of the hotels, you have best of the beaches, you have best of the food and lifestyle in a place which was literally desert just a few years ago. To be able to do that and to be able to bring resources to do that is job of a visionary leader and entrepreneur. And the third thing, making Dubai the first choice of anyone who wants safety, security and a beautiful lifestyle. Today you see all the expats and people are not only coming here for opportunity. People who are super rich and super successful in their life, they are coming here because they want to live in a comfortable and a safe environment. Is there any other city in the world which is as safe as Dubai? I can leave my wallet in the middle of the road. Nobody's gonna even touch it. I live in a house right now with my friend and we don't lock the door. It's so strange for me to not lock the door. It's always open.
Yeah.
You can only build it when you have seen challenges. If Sheikh bin Rashid would have been as privileged as today the generation is, he might not have been able to vision like this. He saw those challenges firsthand. And that's where he realized that I need to make it better for the generations to come.
Right. Thank you so much, Ravi, for visiting us and being with us on the show.
No, but before we conclude, I have a question for you.
Sure. A question for me?
Yes.
Okay.
So, Mahmoud, you are an Emirati born in one of the best cities and the countries in the world. You had a great education, a great family business. Your dad was an amazing entrepreneur.
Thank you.
What inspired you to leave all this comfort and build a startup where you had to struggle? You had to call so many people who rejected your calls. You had to face so many challenges. You could have you have continued living a comfortable life. What inspired you to do this?
First of all, Ravi, thank you so much. I think it's a very deep question. And I understand, when somebody sees an Emirati, they assume that, a father would give his son all of his money and things would go that way. But in my case, I can speak with surety and say, when I was 13 years old, I asked my father, can I have some money? He asked me for what? I said I wanted to buy a motorbike. He said to me, okay, you need to go work. So he took me to his company And every summer I would actually work in his company. By the time I finished high school, I wanted to so I never got that motorbike because I would make enough, but not enough to buy the motorbike, and then I would spend it in school. I would go back to school, my friends would be from other, I came back from the US, from UK. I would say I learned Hindi in my dad's company. I was a carpenter this summer. Next summer, I did different jobs, auto electrician, etc. So by the time I went to university, I had to pay for my own car, had part-time jobs at Showtime, at HSBC. So I was always working. I didn't get that pocket money from my dad. So that's one thing I think that, I saw people around me and I understood the value of money early. And I think it was very intentional for my dad to make me feel that I didn't have anything and I need to work from it, because he was, someone that started from nothing. And he would, so I grew up kind of in that thing. I went to university, always having part-time jobs, finished university, joined the bank. And the minute I joined that dream job, that bank that I wanted to go to, my father passes away. And, that company that we all thought had, all this amazing opportunity turned out to have quite a bit of debt, and there was a mismanagement at some point. 2010 was a very bad time. 2008, there was the crisis, 2 years of no projects. So I also had to deal with that family, I had to step in for the family and take care of debt issues as opposed to come and take money, which is, again, what anybody would assume. So that's two kind of things that shaped who I am that probably is not very public knowledge. But then the third thing is a real problem that happened that after my father had passed away, I went back to work at the bank. I was working at the bank and I was looking for healthy food. And everywhere I was looking for healthy food, I wasn't finding the right option. Or, I said, how do I make food tastes better, that's healthy for me? Because I was going to the gym trying to look better. I think, I was a young man. And I wanted to stay looking fit. And it came from a personal problem that I kept on trying to chase a solution for, couldn't find it. And contrary to, again, popular belief, someone might think, oh, this guy, he got everyone to fund him. I got rejected by everybody in the beginning. I went to a popular healthy food brand here and said, can I franchise your location? They said no. Took that location, I ended up franchising a non-healthy food brand just to get the experience, and then found co-founders and started the startup that I took to 6 countries and then sold it. So my motivation for it was not the money. It was to solve the healthy food problem for me. Now, all this time I've been looking at our ruler, Sheikh Hamdan bin Mohammed bin Rashid, and he's into a healthy lifestyle too. And he's not far from our age. So that kind of motivated me to think, you're not the only one who thinks about health. The leader's son, the crown prince, also thinks about health. So it can't be so crazy that you're into the gym and all this stuff. And then I thought, if I had, some savings from my job, and even if no one wanted to invest with me in the beginning, because when I said healthy food to all of my friends the first time, they said, what's healthy food? Who eats healthy food? What are you talking about? Just save your money. And it was just rejection after rejection that, the biggest rejection came from someone not willing to give me a franchise of their brand, even though I wanted to pay them for it. And, I thought it means there has to be something that's there that I can do that's past someone saying no to me.
Absolutely.
I want the healthy food. I am that customer. I want to eat healthy. How do I eat healthy? So that problem, it needs to come from within, in my experience. And I think I like to solve problems, and I did that journey. Solved the problem with the family. Over 10 years, we paid off that debt. With the startup, we took it and we sold it. And now I think the best thing I can do is to actually educate people and bring all these interesting stories. People that started like you from humble beginnings, and you express and share. I think it's super important for someone to see that. For someone to see that they can do it too. When I was younger, I didn't even have the internet. We grew up in the same time. I had to go to an internet cafe to go look up someone that I heard about, hoping they're online. Like, the amount of steps I needed to find out if something was true was so long. Now you can fact check something so fast. And
Absolutely.
Opportunity. Like, you can make money at 16, at 18 years old today. You can go online on Fiverr, register that job, put yourself, you can use Canva, you can use any platform to make money if you just...
Absolutely, you're right.
And you're competing with someone who's 40 years old, for example, if you're a university student, with someone who's 40, who's been doing something wrong for 20 years, or not even knowing that there's a solution online that he can find.
True.
Become an expert.
Absolutely. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you, Ravi, for asking that question. And thank you for being on the show.
Absolutely a pleasure.